You ever notice how some people seem to just afford everything? They're not necessarily making six figures, but they've got this lifestyle that seems impossible on their actual salary. Nice apartment, regular travel, good restaurants. They don't stress about money at all. You see them and you think, how is that even possible? They're making maybe $60,000 or $70,000 a year, and somehow they're living like they make $120,000. Nobody talks about this. Everyone's obsessed with side hustles and scalable businesses and cryptocurrency and all these things, but the actual answer is so boring and so invisible that most people never think about it. My name is Ian, and what I'm about to show you is the mechanism that separates the people who feel rich from the people who are actually working to death trying to maintain a lifestyle they can't afford. Most people think wealth comes from earning more. And technically it does, but they're completely missing the second part of the equation. The part that actually matters. The thing that makes the difference between someone who earned $70,000 and has stress about money constantly versus someone who earns the same $70,000 and never thinks about it. The answer is dividends. Not in the way you probably think about dividends. Not as some passive income stream that makes you wealthy overnight. I'm talking about understanding how dividends work and, more importantly, how dividend-paying assets create purchasing power without requiring you to earn it. This is the answer that nobody's talking about because it's not exciting, it doesn't involve innovation, it's not a startup story, but it's the actual mechanism that lets ordinary people afford lifestyles that should be impossible on their salaries. Let me walk you through how this actually works because the math is going to blow your mind. You see someone living what appears to be a $100,000 lifestyle on a $70,000 salary, and your first instinct is they're going into debt. They must be. Credit cards, loans, financing, everything. And sure, some people do that. But there's another group, a smaller group, who are doing something completely different. They're not spending money they don't have. They're generating income that's completely invisible to most people. Let's say you're 35 years old. You've been working a solid job for about 10 years. Nothing crazy, nothing special, but you've been disciplined. You've got $150,000 invested in dividend-paying stocks. Maybe it's through an index fund, maybe it's individual stocks, doesn't matter. The S&P 500 index right now has a dividend yield of about 1.5% to 2%. So your $150,000 is generating roughly $2,250 to $3,000 per year in dividends. Per month, that's $187 to $250 in pure income that doesn't show up on your W-2. It's not replacing your salary, but it's real money. Now scale that up a little bit. You've got $300,000 invested. Now you're looking at $4,500 to $6,000 per year. That's $375 to $500 per month. You've got $500,000 invested. That's $7,500 to $10,000 per year. That's $625 to $833 per month. You've got $1,000,000 invested. That's $15,000 to $20,000 per year. That's $1,250 to $1,667 per month. This is the number that matters. This is what people don't see. Someone earning $70,000 a year at their job, but who's got $1,000,000 invested, is actually earning $85,000 to $90,000 in total. They're living like they make more money because they actually do. The dividends are real income. It's not leverage, it's not borrowing, it's not credit. It's actual cash that gets deposited into their account multiple times per year. Here's where it gets interesting because most people think about investing as this distant thing that happens for retirement. They think compound interest is about the future, about some pile of money 30 years from now. That doesn't affect their life today. But that's the wrong way to think about it. The power of dividend-paying investments is that they start affecting your lifestyle immediately. Not eventually, not when you retire. Right now. The second you have enough money invested to generate meaningful dividend income, your effective salary goes up. You can afford a nicer apartment not because you're spending more of your salary, but because the dividends are covering the difference. You can go on vacation, not because you saved for it, but because that's what your quarterly dividend payments fund. You can eat at better restaurants, have hobbies, buy things without thinking about it because there's this steady stream of income that nobody sees coming from your investments. Let me show you the math that makes this work because it's actually fascinating. Let's say you're 25 years old and you commit to investing just $500 per month for the next 10 years. That's a total of $60,000 you've put in. Assuming a 10% annual return, which is roughly the historical average of the stock market, after 10 years, you'd have around $92,000. Now, you can either stop investing, which is what most people do, or you can keep your money in there and let it grow. Let's say you just leave it alone. At 10% annual growth, that $92,000 doubles every 7 years or so. By year 17, you've got roughly $184,000. By year 25, you've got about $367,000. At 10% annual return, that's generating $36,700 per year in growth. But here's the thing. If you've invested in dividend-paying assets instead of growth stocks, a good portion of that return is coming as actual dividends, actual cash. Let's say it's paying 2% in dividends. That's $7,340 per year, just sitting there getting deposited into your account. That's $612 per month. For someone making $50,000 a year, that's more than a 12% increase to their effective income. Now, here's why nobody talks about this. Because it's boring. There's no narrative. There's no story. You didn't start a business. You didn't invent anything. You didn't take huge risks. You just invested money consistently over time. And now the money is working for you. The financial industry doesn't make nearly as much money from dividend investors as they do from people trading individual stocks, paying for financial advice, using premium apps, chasing the hot stock pick of the week. A person who buys a dividend index fund and never touches it again doesn't need a financial advisor, doesn't need a premium subscription, doesn't need anything except to maybe check their account once a year and reinvest their dividends, so they don't really promote it. It's not exciting to sell. But it's absolutely the mechanism that creates the lifestyle difference between people with the same salary. Let me give you a real example because this is where it gets concrete. You know, someone making $65,000 a year who's always stressed about money. They're living paycheck to paycheck, even though their salary should be fine. They're making decent money, but it all goes to expenses. Now, you know someone else making the same $65,000 a year who never seems stressed. They travel multiple times a year, they live in a nice place, they go out to eat whenever they want. Same salary. Completely different financial stress. The difference is almost certainly that the second person has been building dividend-paying investments for years. Maybe they started when they were making less money. Maybe they got a bonus or an inheritance that they invested. Maybe they've been consistently putting 20% of their income into the stock market for the past 15 years, while the first person has been spending everything they make. Either way, the second person has built up a base of assets that generates income separate from their job. And that income, while not life-changing on its own, is life-changing in combination with their salary. This is why understanding compound growth and dividend income is so critical. Because it's not theoretical. It's not about some distant future. It's about right now. Every dollar you have invested today is working for you tonight. It's generating returns while you sleep. If you've got $100,000 in a dividend-paying index fund at 2% yield, that's $2,000 per year, which works out to $5.48 per day. Every single day, your money is making money. You don't feel it because $5 a day seems insignificant. But over a month, it's $165. Over a year, it's $2,000. Over 10 years, it's $20,000 before accounting for reinvestment and growth. Over 20 years, the number gets truly insane because you're compounding on top of the dividends. Here's what really frustrates me about this situation. Young people are told to invest in the stock market. They're told to build long-term wealth, but they're not told the actual mechanism of how this creates lifestyle changes right now. They think, okay, I'll put money in an index fund for 30 years, and then maybe when I'm 60, I'll be able to retire. That's technically true, but it's not the whole story. The whole story is that if you start investing even modest amounts when you're young, by your mid-40s or early 50s, you should have enough invested that the dividends alone are covering a significant portion of your lifestyle expenses. You shouldn't have to work until 65 if you started this at 25. You shouldn't be stressed about money in your 40s if you've been consistent. But because this mechanism is invisible, because it's boring, because it doesn't involve entrepreneurship or innovation or any of the things that get celebrated in modern culture, people don't understand it. Let me actually break down what this looks like in practical terms because this is where it becomes clear why some people just seem to afford everything. Imagine you're 30 years old. You make $70,000 per year. After taxes, you've got roughly $4,500 per month to work with. Now, you're not trying to get rich quick. You're just trying to live a decent life. You allocate your money like this: $2,500 for rent, utilities, food, basic living expenses. That leaves you with $2,000 per month. Now, most people spend that $2,000 and have nothing left. But you decide to do something different. You invest $1,200 per month and spend $800 per month on the extra lifestyle stuff: entertainment, going out, hobbies, travel, the things that make life enjoyable. You do this for 15 years. Your $1,200 per month investment, assuming 10% annual returns, grows to roughly $390,000. At a 2% dividend yield, that's generating $7,800 per year. That's $650 per month. So now you're in your mid 40s. Your salary is probably higher than it was before. Let's say $85,000 or $90,000. After taxes, maybe $5,500 per month. You've got $650 per month coming in from dividends. That's almost 12% more money than you had before. Without earning any additional salary, you didn't get a raise, you didn't change jobs. You just have extra money showing up in your account every quarter because your investments are paying dividends. But here's the beautiful part: you can now reinvest those dividends, which means they compound. You don't need to spend that $650 per month. You add it back into your investments. Now, your investments are growing faster because you're both adding new money and reinvesting the dividends. This is where compound growth starts to become truly exponential. The dividends themselves become investments that generate more dividends. By the time you're in your early 50s, if you've continued this discipline, you might have $700,000 or $800,000 invested. That's generating $14,000 to $16,000 per year in dividends. That's $1,167 to $1,333 per month. At this point, your dividends alone are covering a significant portion of your lifestyle without touching your salary at all. You can literally live on your dividend income while your salary gets saved or invested further. This is the mechanism that lets people retire early. Not because they're getting lucky or they're taking crazy risks or they've found some secret. It's because they've built up a base of assets that generates enough income that they don't need to trade their time for money anymore. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Ian, that's great in theory, but what about volatility? What about downturns? What if the market crashes? And here's the thing you need to understand about dividends. The companies that pay dividends are generally large established companies. They've been paying dividends for decades sometimes. Microsoft pays dividends, Coca-Cola pays dividends, Johnson & Johnson pays dividends. These are companies that have weathered every economic cycle imaginable. When the market crashes, yes, the price of these stocks goes down, but the dividends don't usually stop. The company keeps paying out their quarterly dividend. So if you're relying on dividend income, a market crash doesn't necessarily destroy your income stream. It just means the stock price is lower, which is actually good news if you're still investing, because you can buy more shares at cheaper prices. Let me address the elephant in the room because I know what you're thinking. Most financial advice says you shouldn't rely on dividends for income. They say you should let everything compound. Max out your 401k, defer. Taxes, let it grow for 30 years. And sure, that's a valid strategy if your only goal is to have the maximum amount of money at age 65. But if your goal is to actually improve your lifestyle in your 40s and 50s, to stop trading time for money earlier, to reduce stress about money right now, then the dividend approach is actually superior. Because the dividends are real income happening today. They're not theoretical. They're not in some retirement account you can't touch. They're sitting in your brokerage account available to spend or reinvest. Here's what I think is the most frustrating part about this entire situation. If you're young right now, like in your 20s or early 30s, you've got an enormous advantage. Time. You've got decades for compound growth to work. If you started investing just $300 per month at age 22 and you did nothing else, by age 50, you'd have built a dividend income stream that's covering a significant portion of your living expenses. And the sooner you start, the easier it becomes. Starting at 25 instead of 22 might mean you need to invest $400 per month instead of $300 to hit the same goal. Start at 30 and maybe it's $600 per month. Start at 35 and it's $1,000 per month. The math compounds against you the later you start. But most people don't start. They wait. They think they'll do it later. They think they need to have their life together first. They wait for the perfect moment that never comes. And then 10 years later, they're thinking, why didn't I start earlier? The beautiful thing about dividend income is that it's completely automatic. You don't have to do anything once the structure is in place. You buy your dividend-paying index fund or mix of dividend stocks. You set up automatic reinvestment, and then you forget about it. Every quarter, every month, whatever the dividend schedule is, money shows up in your account. You didn't do anything. You didn't hustle. You didn't sacrifice yourself. Your money did the work. This is the closest thing to true passive income that exists, and yet it's the least celebrated because it's boring. Nobody makes YouTube videos about the person who invested $500 per month in index funds for 20 years. That's not an exciting story. But that person is living a lifestyle that should be impossible on their salary. That person is probably happier, less stressed, and more in control of their future than the person who makes 3 times as much but spends every penny. Let me give you the actual numbers on what this looks like at different ages and different investment levels, because I want this to be concrete. You're 25, you invest $300 per month. By 35, you've put in $36,000. And with 10% returns, you've got roughly $59,000. By 45, you've put in $72,000 and you've got roughly $186,000. By 55, you've put in $108,000 and you've got roughly $480,000. At 2% dividend yield, that's $9,600 per year or $800 per month, showing up in your account without you doing anything. That's the power of starting early. You invested less than $110,000 of your own money, and now you've got $480,000 generating $800 per month. But most people don't see it this way. They see $300 per month as money they can't afford to lose. They see it as deprivation. They don't see the future income it's creating. The second thing I want to address is that dividend investing isn't just for people who are patient and disciplined and never make mistakes. It's actually more forgiving than most approaches. When you're focused on dividends, you're not trying to time the market. You're not trying to pick winners. You're just buying established, profitable companies that pay you to own them. Your returns are lower than if you picked the hottest growth stock, sure, but they're more predictable, they're more stable, and they require zero emotional discipline. You can't panic sell a dividend stock as easily because you're getting paid to own it. The income is real. It's tangible. It's showing up in your account every quarter. Now the question becomes, how do you actually implement this? The answer is simpler than you probably think. You open a brokerage account, any brokerage account, Vanguard, Fidelity, whatever, and you buy an index fund that emphasizes dividend-paying stocks. There's literally funds designed specifically for this. VYM, VDV, SCHD. These are all dividend-focused index funds. You can also just buy the regular S&P 500 index fund, which has dividend-paying companies mixed in. You set up automatic monthly contributions, you turn on dividend reinvestment, and you're done. That's it. You don't need to pick individual stocks. You don't need to study earnings reports. You don't need to understand anything beyond the very basics. You just need to be consistent. You just need to keep buying every month regardless of whether the market is up or down. Over time, that consistency compounds into real wealth and real income. The thing that absolutely kills me is how many people know about investing. They understand the concept intellectually, but they don't actually do it. They think they'll do it someday. They wait for more money. They wait for a better job. They wait for the market to correct. They wait for so many things that waiting becomes the only thing they actually do. And meanwhile, time is the one asset they can never get back. If you're 35 right now and you haven't started investing, you're already late compared to someone who started at 25, but you're incredibly early compared to someone who starts at 45. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. That applies directly to dividend investing. The best time to start building a dividend income stream is when you're as young as possible. The second best time is right now, whatever age you are. Let me tell you what happens psychologically when you build dividend income, because this might be the most important part. There's this moment, usually somewhere around year 7 or 8 if you've been consistent, where you check your account and you realize something has fundamentally changed. You're getting money from dividends that you don't actually need to spend. Maybe it's 300 a month, maybe it's 500 a month. It's not life-changing by itself, but it's real. It's showing up. And that's the moment where something shifts mentally. You realize that you've built something. You've built an asset that's generating income for you. For the first time, your net worth isn't just a number on a screen. It's actually working for you every single day. You're not just accumulating money, you're accumulating income. And that's a completely different mindset. This is also the moment where your timeline to financial independence starts to actually feel real. You're not decades away, living off hope and faith in compound interest. You're already experiencing it. Your dividends are increasing, you're reinvesting them, your investment base is growing faster because of the compounding. And the faster it grows, the faster the dividends grow. It accelerates. This is where most people who achieve early retirement or financial independence experience this realization. They weren't following some special system. They weren't timing the market. They weren't picking the next Tesla. They were just consistently investing in dividend-paying assets and letting time and compound. Growth do the work. The reality is that this mechanism of dividend income is available to anyone who has a job and can save money. It doesn't matter if you make $40,000 or $400,000. The principle is the same. Save a percentage of your income, invest it in dividend-paying assets, and over time, those assets will generate income that improves your lifestyle. Most people making $70,000 a year think someone living a nice lifestyle on that salary must either be in debt or have some other income source that they're not talking about. Sometimes that's true, but often what's actually happening is they've built up a base of investments that are generating real income. That income is invisible to outsiders. It doesn't show up in their job title or their salary, but it's real. And it's the answer to how they're affording their lifestyle. If this routine changed the way you think about building $2,000 to $5,000 a month in passive income and showed you that it's actually achievable with discipline, reinvestment, and time, then don't stop here. On this channel, I break down the exact systems, real-world numbers, and step-by-step strategies behind dividend investing, so you can build your own monthly income stream without hype, gambling, or constant stress. If you found this valuable, hit the like button so more people can discover it. Drop a comment below and tell me your passive income goal, $2,000, $3,000, or $5,000 per month, and I may create a full breakdown around it. And make sure you subscribe because in the next video, I'm going to show you some more ways dividend investing can shower you with passive income.